this discussion. I'm obviously going to maintain my Italian perspective.
And
You're going to come at it from the New World perspective. Speaking of New World perspective, okay. We're going to use old school terminology. So, no, speaking of old world perspective, this is a question that I wanted to ask you. Why were you so happy to watch Spain go down? Is it like an imperialist thing?
that is
Like
absolutely
Spain?
an issue. Now, one thing we didn't mention is I am half Puerto Rican, half Ecuadorian from both my parents. Never understood how people could root for Spanish. It's like, oh my God, look, we root for them because we don't do anything well, but they speak Spanish, so let's root for them. Which explains the rise of people like Rafael Nadal in where you will watch tennis that are Hispanic. Hey, he speaks Spanish, so it's cool. But I was never a fan of Spain. Doesn't hurt that my ex was Spanish. So I mean, she's a lovely human being, but we're not together anymore. So it's fuck that.
Fuck Spain, right?
Yeah.
Because you see that, when you were writing, you were posting about how you're like, oh, it's so good to watch Spain go down. See, from the Italian perspective, it's completely the opposite, right? Because Spain in Europe was kind of like always kind of like the good, like a good team, but never a great team. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, like last World Cup and during the European Championships, they had an awesome team, and it all just kind of came together. And they really played that kind of game that Europeans, or I should say Mediterranean Europeans, really, really like to watch. And they weren't like an arrogant team. They were like, a really, well, okay, you can say that they became arrogant afterwards because of the fact that they won, but leading up to it, that was not the kind of game they played. So everybody in Italy was kind of rooting for Spain because they were like, okay, Spain, they're kind of like us, and they're cool, and they don't play like the Northern Europeans, like England and Holland, and
right,
them annoying soccer players that play as if that think that soccer is a contact sport. Well,
right.
It's not.
Again, things that you.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
Do you know
I
what
do.
I mean? And so I was just kind of surprised. And so then, like, when you were all like, happy that Spain went down. I mean, like, I wasn't happy they went down. I have to say that I've stopped rooting for them because they're playing like the most shit game that I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what's wrong with them. Okay, what's wrong with them? They have no cohesiveness. Okay, they're like,
There's a number of things wrong with that team. First of all,
it's a clusterfuck.
Well, here's the thing. Let's start from the back. You start Iker Casillas, who has not even played regularly this past year. I mean, he hadn't played in a while, but then they decide instead of starting a person who actually plays some sports every so often, put him in goal. And I think ESPN showed a stat earlier today, after he had already conceded his second goal, that in this World Cup he had a total of 6 saves and 7 goals allowed, which tells you all you need to know about a guy that was once considered the best in the world, who doesn't play, and that's what's going to happen. The other big issue, well, I mean, midfield slow down. They're very slow on their build-ups now. They got older. 4 years is a long time. 2 years even, if we're going back to the Euros.